Hi, dear listener. Welcome to the Young Changemakers podcast, an initiative from Global Changemakers. Your co-hosts, Sophie, George, and William are very happy to have you join us today. Over this first season, we'll show you the incredible impact of youth and hopefully inspire you to take action too. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you're ready, let's go!
Welcome, dear listeners. Welcome to this next episode of the Young Changemakers podcast. We're really pumped to have you here on board for the next episode. So my name is Sophie Sahayev. I'm the host from Switzerland. And today I had the wonderful chance to have a chat with Yasmin Morais. She is a 21-year-old changemaker originally from Brazil, but she did her bachelor's in international relations in the United States. And that's where her original idea for the organization came about. So she's the co-founder and executive director of RefEd. This is a student-led project dedicated to providing access to education to refugee children. This is actually mostly what our conversation was about, because a huge side effect of migration is a gap in the education of migrant or refugee children. And it was really, really interesting to dive into this topic that I knew very little about. And we discussed what steps can be taken locally, nationally, and internationally. Yasmin is also the program manager for the Global Changemakers Mentorship program, which is something I mentioned already on the last episode. And if you'd like to get more info on this, go check out the website, our website. The link is in the show notes. And the deadline to apply for this is actually on the 13th of December. So you have a few days if you're interested in applying for that, and I highly recommend. And as you know by now, the mission of the podcast, as well as Global Changemakers as an organization, is to support young leaders. And to do so, we're currently raising funds to be able to achieve this goal. So we do this through the platform called Global Giving. And tomorrow, so that's the 3rd of December, they're matching any funds raised during that day. So that means that whatever amount you contribute, they will invest the same amount. So more information about this can be found also on our website or in the show notes. I'll link all of that in the show notes for you guys. Thank you so much for your support, and enough of me talking. Let's get into it. Enjoy our next interviewee, Yasmin Morais. Hi, dear listeners. Welcome to this episode of Young Changemakers podcast. I'm your host, Sophie, and I'd like to welcome the lovely Yasmin Morais to this episode. Hi, Yasmin.
Hello, everyone. Super happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Sophie, and the other hosts. I'm super excited.
We're super excited to have you too. How are you today?
Doing very well. It's a really good weather where I am right now. At the moment, I'm in São Paulo, Brazil, and it's been a good and productive day, so I'm feeling good.
Nice. I'm always so jealous of the interviewees I've had so far, because Courtney last time was also in a really nice climate. And hey, it's
I guess
dark
we have the privilege of living in the Southern Hemisphere, so that's always good.
Yeah. So I'd like to start off this interview with your favorite quote. A quote that has either influenced or shaped your life or your work.
Okay, it's actually hard to pick one, but I'd say I would pick a quote from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She was the first female president of the continent of Africa, and she says, "If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough." And when I read this, I was reading her biography, and I was just starting my project, which we're going to talk about today, and feeling that sense of, the problem is just too big. I can't do that much. I don't have the resources. But then when I read her biography, her story, and I came across this quote, it really encouraged me to do it, even though it felt scary and big. And today I actually remind myself of that quote. Anytime I feel like I'm going through a challenge that I can't face, I remind myself that I'm on the right path if I'm feeling like I'm challenging myself. And then along with that, I would also highlight something my dad told me when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was laying on his lap back home, looking at the stars in the evening. We could see like the stars from our apartment from the window. And I told him I wanted to be an astronaut because that's what I wanted to be when I was younger. And he told me, whatever you do, you have to aim at the moon so that at least you reach the stars. And those two quotes go really well together. And every time I feel challenged or I feel like I can't conquer something, I can't face a setback, then I remind myself of Ellen Johnson and I remind myself of my dad and I just go for it. So I think those two would be the main ones in my journey so far.
I love them. I hadn't heard the first one, but I've also been told the second one with the moon and the stars, and it's
beautiful, isn't it?
it is, yeah. It's very poetic and very. It also just sort of, like you said, when dreams are really big, they seem a bit daunting, and so it enables you to, go for it anyway, and whatever you do, you'll have an impact.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
really nice.
That's it. Yeah, thank you.
For sharing. So you briefly mentioned the initiative you started working on, and that is RefEd. So could you tell the listeners a bit what RefEd does and what it is?
Of course. So RefEd was started in 2017, back when I was studying at Boston University along with two other friends. And it's an app that delivers access to educational content to refugees who have either limited or no access to education because of migration. So what happens a lot of times is when children migrate with their families, fleeing from political conflict or wars or whatever the reason is, and go to a different country, the host country has trouble getting them to the educational system fast. And so a lot of times they have a gap that can last for months or years, depending on the situation, until they're able to access education again. So RefEd was created not to replace the formal education system itself, but to fill a gap of access to education while they're moving. So right now we have an app with 3 educational modules: Arabic alphabet, we have English and math and mathematics. And we now implement the module through partnerships with local NGOs that serve refugees directly. So that's what we've been working on since then. And lots of challenges ahead. I think we're still in the beginning, but we do want to scale, expand, and reach refugees worldwide.
Because right now you're working in Greece, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. So at the moment, we're working with a partnership with Seeds of Humanity Greece. It's an organization that serves refugee families with different services in Athens. And we now work through them to deliver the educational content to the refugees living in the area. They usually come from Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Pakistan.
I see. And how or why did you start this initiative? What sparked this interest?
A few things. So I think I would start with my personal story. I was born in the northern part of Brazil, and I moved to the south because my family wanted to give me access to the best education in the country, and that was only found in the southern part of Brazil. So when I was 5, I moved for the first time. And then after completing my education in Brazil, I was looking for the best places where I could study at university. And my degree is in international relations. So I ended up choosing to go to the United States and to study in Boston. So I moved once again to study to accomplish my dreams, which were directly related to what I study at school. So school was always a priority for my life, and education was always for me the key to any definition of success that I could picture for myself in life. And I would always move to different places to do that. And so when I was in the U.S., that's when I moved there, the refugee crisis was at its peak. And I was studying it as a course at university, and also meeting people who were directly affected by it and that did not have access to opportunities because they were migrants and because they were refugees. And so that really struck me, because for me, moving freely and accessing education were two really, really important things that marked my story. And I realized I could use the resources I had to guarantee that other people would have access to that as well. And so my friends and I started brainstorming on how we could use the resources we had to contribute to the problem, to solving the problem. And that's how we started RefEd. We're just mapping out the resources we had. We talked to lots of people who were affected by the problem. We interviewed a lot of specialists who are also working to solve it. And that's how we came up with the idea.
Okay, and why did you guys decide on going through an app?
Yeah, so we considered a few ideas that we had in mind, and we ended up realizing that it had to be something that did not rely on internet connection the whole time, because internet connection is not as reliable sometimes when you're moving, or if we want to reach refugee camps. They usually do have access to data, but they prioritize using that data to contact friends and family. So we did not want them to rely on internet to access the whatever platform we were creating. So that was one thing with the app. They would be able to download it and access the content offline. And the other thing is that our university had a fellowship in partnership with the Global Studies Department and the Computer Science Department. And we applied to the fellowship, and we were able to, our university paid 2 interns to develop the app initially, the MVP. And so the resources we had combined with the needs that we had for the idea to work out ended up with us choosing to do an app. But something that's really, really important to us is to fall in love with the problem and not the solution itself. So whenever someone asks us what we do is we help close the gap of access to education. We are still in the beginning, and if that idea doesn't work out in the long term, we are going to change it. That's not our focus, is not to be an app, but to solve the problem. So I think that's really, really important to us.
I think that's the difference between a vision and the product, right? How you get to that vision is not necessarily the most important. What is important is the vision and working
Exactly,
towards
yeah.
that. Yeah. And I think that also enables organizations to stay agile and to be able to adapt to any
Sure.
changes or obstacles, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something that we have very strong in our team culture, to always evaluate the most basic things about our idea, from whether buttons are working and colors are appealing to the children, to are they actually learning from the content? Do they learn more because of us? How much can we attribute to this idea of their growth, and so on. So for us, it's really important to know that we are actually tackling the problem and not only one more idea out there that is not really creating impact.
I see. And so you mentioned the team. How many are you guys?
We are 6 people at the moment. So there's me. I deal mostly with administration, fundraising, and related things. We have 2 content developers that work directly developing and curating the lesson plans and the content to put in the app. We have 1 person working with external partnerships and also the formalization process, because we're working on becoming an NGO in the US right now. We have then 2 people working in software development, being one of them also a translator. All of our content is available in both English and Arabic, and so we have a person on the team to translate that for us.
Okay. And are most of these people based in the US?
Most of them, yes. So 4 of them are based in the US. I'm in Brazil, and 1 person is in Lebanon.
And how has that been working with a very diverse team and especially remotely?
Um, it's That's a good question. It's always a challenge in the beginning when I had to move to Brazil, because before I moved to Brazil, we were all in the US. The person from Lebanon wasn't on the team yet. So we needed an adaptation period to figure out our communications, how we were going to work on a distance, how our schedules would look like, and so on. So it took us a while to adapt, but now I can say that we are used to it. We use some communication platforms and project management platforms to keep track of our tasks on a distance. We also have a weekly meeting where we give each other updates and we make decisions together on whatever is coming up. And I have to say, I'm super, super lucky to have an amazing team. They're super competent and passionate. And I think one last thing that I would mention about that is that we make a point to cultivate team values like effective communication and commitment. And we evaluate ourselves every 2 months on how we're doing in terms of communication and commitment, just to keep each other accountable, to make sure that the distance is actually not going to harm our productivity or the work that we do, and so on. So we always try to evaluate ourselves and improve on the way that we work internally so that our impact is actually sustained.
And do you mind going a bit more in detail into this evaluation?
Sure. So we use a tool called Evaluation Mandala. We have a few, so it's like a circle with a bit, with like, it's like a pizza, and each slice represents one thing. It goes from commitment to accountability and communications and a few other values that we want to cultivate: respect, trust, and so on. And we download a PDF version of this evaluation mandala, and then we color each one of the values according to what we think we personally are doing. We evaluate ourselves individually, and then we have a meeting. We go through each one of the mandalas, and then we make one whole evaluation mandala for the whole team. And that's how we discuss, okay, what do we need to improve? What was the average for each one? And how can we increase it for next time? And so on. Usually our main challenge is with communications because we're all in different time zones. So sometimes if I need something fast from someone who is on the other side of the world, it takes a while. So for us, it's mostly about adapting and being able to communicate well. Other than that, I think we work pretty well. We're able to deliver everything that we promise we will. So it's a good sign.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing this this useful tool. I'll definitely be using that.
It's
My
awesome.
future.
Yeah, it's very useful and very simple too. So
Absolutely. Thank you. So back to sort of what you guys do at RefEd. So how do you decide what modules or what is actually put as content on the platform or in the app?
yeah, that's a great question. So we started with math because we wanted something that could be tested fast and easy. And math is something that's easier to quantify. So that's how we started. We created a module on math with 5 different chapters, ranging from ratios and proportions to geometry, statistics, and related things based on the age group that we work with, which is 9 to 13 years old. And then when we first implemented the program in Greece, the kids asked us for English and Arabic. And so we were like, oh, okay, like our commitment is to what they need and not to what we think they need. So let's just sit together, meet, and see how we can pull together maybe some content on those subjects. And we assessed the resources we had, the time we had, and we realized that we were able to create some content on English vocabulary and on the Arabic alphabet. And so we did it while we implemented the program in Greece to respond to what the children expected from us. So it's the same principle we were talking earlier about being sensible to what they actually need and adapting accordingly. Right now we have those 3 subjects, and we are able to update and adapt them based on what the kids need on the ground. Also, that's one differential we really wanted for the team, because there are so many different education content apps out there, but none of them are specifically targeted towards refugees. And so whenever we create content, our videos are made with animated characters that are all refugees too, and they have stories and they can relate. to the kids using the app. And so and also when creating any kind of content, for example, when creating English content about vocabulary, we always have in mind what kinds of places they would need English for in their routine. Things like going to enroll at school or going to a hospital with pain. So they need that for their daily life, and it's a very urgent need because they're living in Europe, so they need English to communicate. So whenever we develop content, we do our best to do it from the user's perspective to understand what exactly they need with that content and how we can respond to it.
Interesting. I think it's good. Again, we've mentioned this before, but to be able to adapt to, let's say the beneficiaries of the app, right? In the end, you have to listen to what they need and what they want, and be able to adapt to that. It's great that you guys are implementing that. Good job. Hearing about this, I'm a very big fan of of the organization, and I hope the listeners are too.
Thank you so much.
Hi there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We just wanted to let you know that we are on social media at WeAreGCM, and don't hesitate to follow us. And if you'd like to support us further, we also have a Patreon page. Type in Global Changemakers and decide which tier is best for you. Thank you. And now, on with the rest of the episode.
And so generally about the refugee situation at the moment, in your from your point of view, what still needs to be done, either locally, nationally, or internationally?
Okay, let's go by steps. I think locally, I would think of the civil society, us, what we can do. And I would say welcoming and supporting refugees in our community, in our daily lives, is already a big step. Wherever we are, there are immigrants. So supporting them at school, at work, in the hospital, at public transportation, in cultural activities, anywhere that we transit in our daily life, there is going to be an immigrant. There is a possibility that they will be refugees. And so I think being aware, being sensitive to that, and making yourself available to be present with them and to meet their need if they come to you and ask for something. I think that's really important. If you're a university and you come across someone who is an immigrant who's studying there, they're probably adapting to the country. There's a cultural shock. There's everything's going on kind of at the same time. I think just being present to listen and making yourself available if they need anything is already very significant. I think nationally, I would think of the government. So I think public policies to support integration of refugees is really important. Things like degree validation, so they're able to work in their profession. Things like language classes, so they can adapt better to the new country. Things like clear instructions in their language on how to get national IDs, how to open bank accounts, and other like bureaucratic things that differ from one country to the other make a whole difference too. And I really strongly believe in economic growth that comes out of integration with the markets, with incentives to entrepreneurship for refugees, and all of that. I think all of that makes a really good policy package that would integrate refugees into the economy, into society, because we have this idea that was portrayed by some of the media outlets that refugees are here to steal our jobs, that they're here to steal our services, but they actually are here to contribute. They actually are here because they want to give out something. They chose your country to move to because they thought they would have a better quality of life there. And they do want to pay taxes. They do want to have their IDs and contribute to the economy and so on. So why not create clear and effective channels for them to do that, right? I think on the national level, that's what needs to be done. And internationally, I think agreeing on how to promote safe migration across countries, fair border security policies that will not be based on race or where the person is coming from, discussions on how to support countries that have decided to open their borders. Maybe you don't have the resources to accommodate more people in the short term, but you do have the resources to help a different country do that. I think more investment on integration than on quote unquote security would be much more effective. If Europe, for instance, didn't spend so much money building fences, but instead they spent money creating integration policies, in the longer term, I think the situation would be much better settled than what is happening right now. So I think that's what I would say about what needs to be done.
I completely...
It's a lot.
Well, first of all, I think that you summarized it really well. I know that was a difficult question.
Yeah.
When I was writing it down, I was thinking, I wonder if there is a clear answer to this. But I think that you did a really good job.
There's still a lot else that I could mention, but I think that summarizes well.
Of course, yeah. Is there anything that the listeners can right now take action on?
I'd say, first of all, learn more about the issue, learn more about how people in your community specifically are affected by it, because it differs from one country to the other, it differs from even one city to the other. So just learn a lot, and then look at your own resources, what you have to give, and see how you can fill a gap. Maybe there's already lots of initiatives going on in your city, and you only have like 2 or 3 hours a week to volunteer. Maybe you can fill a gap of one of those initiatives who needs someone else to help. So I would say, first, dig deep into the problem, then look at the potential solutions or the solutions that are already existing in your community, and see how you can fill a gap between them. I think that's a good way to start. With RefEd, if you want to donate, you can go to our website, refedinitiative.com. We are accepting donations starting from November 18th. So so that we can cover our operational costs for 2020. So if you want to help us with that, we'd be super, super thankful. And there are many other ways many other organizations and initiatives that you can donate to. Find something that you identify with, that you think you want to help, and go for it. I think everything is valid.
Okay, lovely. I'll link that in the show notes. And it's RefEd, REFED.
Yes, refedinitiative.com.
Initiative, yes.
Yes.
Are you guys on social media as well?
We are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Okay, all RefEd Initiative?
Oh, RefEd Initiative, yes.
Okay, lovely. I was also, while you were talking, another question popped into my mind. I feel like when we talk about the refugee crisis, it's quite Eurocentric, and I was wondering if this is also a topic in the Americas generally, in Brazil maybe more specifically.
Yeah, there are refugees everywhere. There always has been, actually. It got a lot of visibility recently because of the refugee crisis in Syria, with the war in Syria, but there always has been refugees. Every time we think of war, there's people fleeing the place to go somewhere else safer, or if you think about people going somewhere else for economic opportunities or because of political unrest. You know, there's many causes, and it happens everywhere in the world. It's not only in Europe and in the Middle East. In South America now, we have lots of refugees coming into Brazil from Venezuela. And I would even take you as far as Oceania. We have lots of climate refugees fleeing from the small islands in Polynesia into bigger islands because of climate change. So there is a huge variety of causes and of places that refugees go to.
Yeah, I think that the influence that climate change has on the refugee crisis, or generally migration, is not talked about that much yet. Maybe because we're only starting to see the effects of it. if you guys, the listeners, are interested, George had a talk with Danielle on, I believe, the second episode. So if you want to hear more about climate change and climate activism, go check that out.
Love it. Awesome.
Yes. I think it goes out 2 weeks before this one goes out. So go check it out.
Awesome.
And to wrap up a bit this chat, I want to ask a few questions about you and how you sort of manage your time because you are working on various projects at the same time. Do you have any tips for listeners that want to, let's say, multitask a bit or manage their time more efficiently?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really exciting to be able to work on various projects that really speak into my purpose. And I think that's what keeps me motivated the most. They all speak a lot into my purpose and get me energized. But I think the effect would be the opposite if I didn't manage my time well. So I think my main advice is to plan things ahead. Find a planning tool that works for you. Trello, Coro, Asana, Google Calendar, or even a simple paper journal can work, whatever works for you. And try and set a time every week to plan for the week ahead. When you do that, don't forget to include your resting time. It's really, really important to sleep well so that you can be productive. Drink lots of water. And if you'd like, you can add other small things that make you feel rested and energized in your day, like meditating or calling a friend every now and then to catch up on life. So I do all of that, and it works really well for me. I am a morning person, so I usually wake up early, go to bed early. But if I don't sleep well and if I don't plan ahead, I'm not able to fit everything in one day. But I can tell you from my personal experience, it is possible to do a lot with few resources, not only time, but anything, if you plan well and if you're able to use your resources well. I
can strongly agree with that. And I had to smile when you said that you were a morning person. I'm absolutely not a morning person.
That's okay too.
And for the listeners, Yasmin and I worked for a little bit together on a project, and we had different sleeping schedules, and I was not in a good mood in the morning at all, and she would always have a big smile on her face in the morning, and I'm very impressed by morning people, I must say.
I'm impressed by people who can stay up late. I just can't. My battery runs over. I have to go to bed. 5 a.m., I'm up and running. Take a shower, get my laptop, let's go.
5 a.m.? Oh my goodness.
Okay, 5:30.
That is impressive. It really is. If you guys are morning people or evening people, or what are we called? Night owls, I think. Go give us a comment on Instagram.
Let us know. Are you Team Sophie or Team Yas?
Exactly. Let us know on Instagram or whatever social media you'd like to use. So one sort of last question to wrap it up. If you could talk to yourself at the beginning of your Changemaker journey, what advice would you have for yourself?
Oh man, okay. I think I would tell myself two things. I think first, I would remind myself of what we were talking about earlier, that it's okay to change and adapt. And that I think as change makers, we always need to keep the people we work with in mind, that we're not doing this for them, we're doing this with them. And if we realize something hasn't worked well with them, we need to change it. It's much important to make sure that the problem is truly being tackled, then our idea is being implemented. If the idea didn't work, then let it go and change it into something else. Many times in my journey, I got anxious because I realized part of my idea didn't yield the results that I expected. But thankfully, I was willing to adapt and to actually tackle the problem. So I think that's the first thing I will tell myself. I think the second thing I would say is share more. Talk more to people about what you've learned, how you started it, why you started it. Your story can inspire so many people just by being you, just by sharing why you do what you do. And I think giving this interview is a good start to do that. And this podcast is all about it. It's all about sharing your story to inspire others. So I'm really, really thankful to be a part of it, to have given this interview, and I will do that more. I will share more. I think that's something that I feel like I need to do.
Please do so, yes, because I think that your story is really inspiring and should be shared more. So thank you for sharing it on the podcast. It was really, really great having a chat with you. As usual.
Thank you. You're an amazing host. Thank you so much for doing this.
That's very sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much. And for all you listeners out there, hope you're having a good day. And I hope you enjoyed this interview, and take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned for the other ones.
Bye. If you'd like to know more about Global Changemakers and our mission of enabling youth to create a positive impact in their communities, you can visit our website at global-changemakers.net or follow us on social media at WeAreGCM. And if you'd like to support us further, go check out our Patreon page at Global Changemakers and help us have a greater impact. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Young Changemakers. See you next Tuesday.